Good Friday afternoon to you. I hope you're having a great day and your weekend's off to a good start. Thanks for joining us on Sports4CLE. We'll talk Guardians, some OHSAA, name, image, and likeness, and we begin by talking Browns football. Let's welcome in Browns beat reporter from the Elyria Chronicle Telegram, brownzone.com, Scott Petrak. Scott, let's start with this. ESPN's 32 biggest questions for each NFL team, so one for each team. Browns, is drafting a wide receiver early possible? Or will Andrew Berry look elsewhere? They did acquire Amari Cooper. We'll get into him in a bit. What do you think? Is it wide receiver at 44?
I think it's certainly possible. I would not say it's automatically going to be a receiver. But, when you look at that receiving core, yes, they added Amari Cooper, which is huge, and gives them that number one, fills that void at number one receiver. But I also feel like they need more youth at that position. And I know Donovan Peoples-Jones is only entering his third year and Anthony Schwartz in his second year. But I think you need a starter. I think the Browns would like one of their top guys, whether they're number 2 or number 3, to be a young guy that they really like. And the best way to find that guy is at number 44.
Yeah, they need to make they need some more dynamic guys in that receiving core. I'm with you. So you talked to Nick Saban, former Browns assistant back in the day under Belichick, current Alabama head coach, who has coached both Amari Cooper and a rookie that we'll talk about, John Mechie. What did you find out? Let's start with Cooper. What did Nick Saban have to say about Amari Cooper?
Yeah, Amari Cooper is Nick Saban's kind of guy. He's not a diva receiver, which you see a lot, right? He mentioned multiple times how hard a worker he was, how he was humble, didn't say much. Every time they talked, he would listen to what Nick Saban was telling him, and that's huge to Nick Saban. That's what he's looking for in his players. So he gave him a really strong review, said they keep in touch a little bit, but, it's tough for him to see him play a lot on Sundays because, he's working during most of the season. But, kind of what you've heard about Amari Cooper since he's been in the NFL, it goes back to those Alabama days. And Cooper had been interviewed once and said that what he really learned about winning came a lot from Saban. And I told Nick Saban that, and he was, flattered by it. He said, yeah, that's what we're trying to do as a coaching staff, is to instill that, right? And get everybody to be the best version of themselves and to try to win, place winning is such a high premium on that, but also get each player to live up to his potential. And that's one of the things Amari Cooper credited Nick Saban with. So, and if you look at the numbers, Alabama's obviously had a lot of big-time receivers. You look at Julio Jones was a top pick. And then I think in the last 2 drafts, they've had 5 guys taken in the first round. Amari Cooper's like the most productive of everybody. He's, he was only there 3 years. And if you just take it for per year, he's the leader in catches, yards, and touchdowns. So, Nick Saban has a lot of reasons to like this guy.
So Alabama has a couple of wide receivers that figure to get drafted in the first few rounds. Obviously, Jameson Williams, there's some people that are saying he's going to be a top 10 pick recently, that he's flying up the draft board. Let's talk a little bit about John Mechie. That's a guy that has been linked later rounds to the Browns, second, third, one of those 2/3 even.
Yeah. He's a guy that he's Nick Saban's kind of guy too. He likes to block, he's a willing blocker, which I know the Browns really look for in their receiving core because they're such a run-heavy team. The receivers need to block downfield. Highly productive, able to get open, doesn't have blazing speed. He's not, he didn't run a 40 because he's coming off a torn ACL in the SEC title game. And Saban said that was, a fluke. I watched the video, he's just kind of running a comeback route and the knee gives, And Saban said everybody saw Odell Beckham Jr.'s injury in the Super Bowl, and he goes, this is like worse than that because there's even less contact. Odell's, everybody kind of, oh my gosh. And he said he thought this injury was worse just because it happened for no reason. It just gave out. But he's a really good route runner, despite maybe not having blazing speed and not unbelievable size. He figures out a way to get open, run after catch he's good at. And he's got a really interesting background. He was born in Taiwan, lived in Ghana for a while, moved to Canada. His mom moved the family to Canada. And then at like 14, Mechie said, I'm going to go to the United States to a boarding school because he really thought college football was his future. So he went to school in Maryland with the goal of becoming a big-time college football player, and then got the scholarship to Alabama and was huge. Came off the bench for an injured, I think it was Jalen Waddle got hurt in 2020. Mechie came in and started and had a huge year and had another big year in 2021 before the ACL. So I do think he'll be in that mix for the Browns, whether it's 44 or 78 or somewhere in between if the Browns move around the draft board.
Yeah, and he certainly sounds like the kind of guy that would fit based on what you're saying and what you've heard from Nick Saban. All right, these are three Browns offensive moves that aren't being talked about enough, according to Dog Pound Daily. So number 3 is acquiring Chase Winovich, edge rusher, outside linebacker, would be kind of that depth piece. I don't think you're counting on him to be a number 2. What are your thoughts on that, Chase Winovich, and what he could mean?
I think there's a chance he could have a big role. I'm not willing to assume that right now. And probably a lot of that is because he didn't have much impact with the Patriots last year, and injuries played a role in that. And I think he kind of fell out of favor with Bill Belichick for whatever reason, wasn't used much at all. But if he fills that number 3 role, which currently is vacant, so is the number 2 role. But if he fills that number 3 role, then yeah, he'll be important. He'll need to get to the quarterback, because I thought Takk McKinley did a good job in that before he got hurt last year. And he dealt with injuries a couple times throughout the year. But when he was on the field, I thought he was effective. And I think McKinley had a bigger resume than Winovich does. But the Browns need someone to step into that role, and I think Winovich will get the first chance to do that.
Number 2 on this list, wide receiver and a return guy, and that's Jakeem Grant. We'll talk a little bit more about him in a moment. I think this was one that people are kind of overlooking. I'm not saying he's a number 2 receiver, but he is a guy that has a skill set that you can use and use effectively. He's a guy that makes big plays in the passing game.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, as a returner, obviously they need him, right? I mean, it's huge. They had a big gap there for years, right? Not being able to generate anything explosive in the return game. So that's the first reason the Browns got him. But I do think his ability as a receiver has been overlooked, and he can have a role, no doubt in my mind, in the offense. And it's interesting. We talk so much about the Browns need receivers, and I'm not arguing that they don't. But when you start looking at kind of the bottom half of the depth chart, there's a lot of guys there, right? If you say you got, right now, there's Amari Cooper and Donovan Peoples-Jones. You say those are your 2 starters before any moves are made. You also have Jakeem Grant. You have Anthony Schwartz. You have Demetric Felton, right? Cross between running back and receiver, but played more at receiver last year. Jamarcus Bradley. Like, all of a sudden, there's some names there of guys that at least have had some experience, or the Browns have high hopes for, like a guy like Anthony Schwartz. So I'm curious whether or not the Browns will make 2 big receiver additions between now and, training camp, whether it's free agency or the draft, or if they only make 1 big receiver move, kind of slot a guy in at number 2 and feel like they have enough down the roster depth.
The other one we talked a little bit about, Amari Cooper, is the top acquisition for the Browns in the offseason that's not being talked about enough, and it's being overshadowed because of the Deshaun Watson acquisition. How good do you think Cooper is? What type of year you think he has with Deshaun Watson in this Browns offense?
I think it's a chance to have a big year. I mean, the guy's had 5 1,000-yard seasons in 7 years in the NFL. He's shown really good hands, the ability to get open. Now, he's not as flashy as an OBJ or a Tyreek Hill, right? But I do think he will be productive. I think this is a good offense for him. If you run the right routes and you're in the right spot, you have a chance to make plays. If the run game is what it has been the last 2 years under Coach Kevin Stefanski, then that opens things up for the passing game. It opens things up for your number 1 receiver running those deep digs, those crossing routes, because there's so much play action. I think Deshaun Watson being able to keep plays alive would give Amari Cooper a chance to get deep downfield and make a lot of plays down the field. So, you're right. Deshaun Watson is taking all the spotlight, but Amari Cooper is the other big move. And they're connected, and it's a huge move because that was the Browns' number 1 need entering the offseason, was finding that number 1 wideout.
So we talked a little bit about Jakeem Grant and what he means to the Browns' kick return game. So take a look at this. The last time the Browns had a punt return for a touchdown, 2015. Last time they had a kickoff return for a touchdown, 2009. Jakeem Grant, who you're seeing take this one back against the Packers, has had 6 returns for touchdowns since 2016. That is the reason the Browns wanted Jakeem Grant. That upgrades that significantly.
Oh, there's no doubt. And, we expect the Browns to be in playoff contention. We expect them to play a lot of close games, right? It's a difficult division. It's a difficult conference. Those plays change games, and we just haven't seen the Browns do that enough. And if you're old enough, like us, you can remember Joshua Cribbs, right? Changing games because he was such a presence back there, even on bad Browns teams. And then when they were good in 2007. Travis Benjamin had that role where you had to worry about him if you were the other team, and he gave you a chance to score or flip the field. And the Browns just haven't had guys to do that. And I think it's frustrating for coordinator Mike Pfeiffer. It's frustrating for Kevin Stefanski, because you feel like you just don't have all your pistons firing at the same time. And other teams have those guys that make you worry, right? The Browns play teams like that. Cincinnati's always has a good returner and can change the game or can flip the field. And now the Browns should be on level playing field.
Yep, the hidden yardage, as they say. Scott Petrak and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we continue talking Browns. We'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the defense with Joe Wood. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram, Scott Petrak, and I continue talking Browns. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about Joe Wood's defense.
Hey, this is a question for Joe Woods. I think he should have the defensive back play more bump and run and give Myles Garrett a little bit more time to get to the quarterback.
All right, as always, we appreciate all of the voicemails. Scott, what do you think about it? You think that's something they would do?
It's interesting because you look at the corners, and you have Denzel Ward, and you have Greg Newsome, you have Troy Hill in the slot, and you like that trio, right? You like that threesome, and you think they do have the ability to play bump and run. I just don't think, at least in the first 2 years, that's kind of the plan for Kevin Stefanski, right? His philosophy has been more, let's be conservative, whether it's offensively or defensively. And I just wonder if that changes if you believe you have a big-time quarterback like you do in Deshaun Watson, right? And you think, all right, we're going to score a bunch of points. Let's jump on these other teams. Let's suffocate them. Let's take away stuff early, as opposed to in the past couple of years, it felt like keep everything in front of you, slow the game down. We're going to run it a bunch. And I think they have the players to do it. And I'm interested to see if there's a philosophical switch this season, and they're more aggressive both sides of the ball.
Yeah, that's fair. I never really thought it in terms of you don't have the guy that you think is going to put up a ton of points with the offense. So that's very interesting. Yeah, that does make sense. All right, so Bleacher Report, who will reset the market at different positions next year? And for the cornerback position, they say Denzel Ward, and I'm guessing that's a pretty good bet. Joe Corey, that's former NFL agent, believes the floor, so the bottom of it, is $19.4 million average annual value that Marshawn Lattimore got in 2021. He has certainly shown that he is an elite cornerback when he's on the field, and he was on the field most of the time. Do you think an extension gets done, and is it a big money deal for Denzel Ward?
Yes and yes. I would expect it before the season, sometime, May, June, July, early August, right? If it doesn't happen by then, you start wondering, well, why hasn't it happened? I think the Browns need to settle some stuff, salary cap wise first. Whether Jadeveon Clowney comes back, or you work out a long-term extension with David Njoku. Are you able to trade Baker Mayfield, and how much of the contract comes off your salary cap by trading Baker Mayfield? I think that those are all things they probably want to figure out before they commit a bunch of money to Denzel Ward and, figure out how to structure his contract. But I don't know why the Browns wouldn't want Denzel Ward back. He's a number 1 corner. I know Greg Newsome, the second is good. But he hasn't shown obviously enough that he's a shutdown guy like Denzel Ward is. So yeah, I expect to get done. I think Xavier and Howard, signed a big deal recently as the top corner now. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of money you can look for to see if Denzel passes that or if the Browns are able to save a little bit and slot him just under that.
Yeah, and the other thing to remember, Greg Newsome was good, but teams are playing more and more 3 wide receivers. You need guys that can run all over the field and cover because the NFL is a passing league. That's why the Browns went out and got Deshaun Watson. All right, this is from ESPN. Off-season concerns and 2022 predictions for the Browns. So the off-season concerns, wide receiver and defensive line are the 2 main areas of concern, and you see the rationale right there. Predictions. If Watson is not suspended, the Browns are much improved, get back to the playoffs. If he's suspended for 4 games or more, Cleveland will miss the playoffs again. Thoughts on that? And the other thing to keep in mind, it has come out that they will not try the civil suits during the season, which makes it seem less likely that Deshaun Watson gets suspended. Or am I assuming too much there?
Yeah, I think it's still moving. I think that scale's still moving. I read something from USA Today talking about the latest legal rulings by a judge. Will that spur Deshaun Watson to want to settle? And then will the women, the plaintiffs, agree to the settlements? And if that happens, then there'll be some kind of closure from a legal perspective, and then it's up to the NFL to finish its investigation. The question to me is if there's no settlements and the lawsuits drag into 2023, right? Because they're not going to get done before the season. And there's an agreement not to have trials during the football season. Then does the NFL still hand down a punishment, or does it wait until more information could come out in the trials? And I think that's a huge question that the NFL right now is not willing to answer. So I think it's too early to say whether or not he'll be suspended and whether or not it'll be in 2022 or 2023. But that's interesting. I think the Browns could handle 4 games if you're suspended for 4. If it starts getting up in 6 and 8 or even longer, then that's just a long time to miss your starting quarterback. But, if he plays a majority of the season or a vast majority of the season, yeah, I think the expectation, no doubt, is to go to the playoffs. And even if he's not, I think the Browns feel like the rest of the roster should be good enough to at least put them in a situation where if Watson is back for a stretch run, that they have a chance to make it, even if he misses time early.
If he is there for most of the season, my guess is the goal is a home play. They're not thinking playoffs. They're thinking more playoff positioning and AFC Championship game, Super Bowl type of thing.
Yeah, that's the expectation because they think he puts them on the same level with the Patrick Mahomes and the Justin Herberts and Joe Burrows, right? Lamar Jackson. So we can go down the list of big-time quarterbacks in the AFC. Russell Wilson now. I just think when there's that depth of quality quarterbacks and quality teams in the AFC, it makes it tough to kind of count anything as a given, right? Like the Chiefs feel like a given to me, but I don't know if they are in that division anymore. So the Browns are in obviously a tough division with the defending AFC champions, and then the Baltimore team that should be much healthier than it was a year ago. So yes, I'm sure that would be the goal, and the Browns should be in that discussion. But they could easily finish 3rd in this division, even if Deshaun Watson played a bunch of games. That would be a disappointment, but I don't think it's outlandish to think that, given the talent in the division and across the AFC.
Yeah, AFC is without question loaded, and so is the AFC North as well. Scott Petrick and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll hear from Baker Mayfield from the podcast You Never Know, You Know What I Mean, and get some reaction nationally as to how Baker sounded. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrak from the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram. So yesterday it dropped. It was Baker Mayfield talking on the You Never Know, You Know What I Mean podcast. And one of the topics he discussed was not getting caught up with what's going on with him on social media.
I'd be lying to you if I didn't say that I got caught up in all the negativity and stuff during the year last year. Postseason, when I got my surgery, I was out in California. My marketing agent's out there. I had him grab all my social media, change all the passwords, delete it off my phone. The only thing I have is Bleacher Report. That's why I get football notifications. That's the only reason I know anything going on in the world. I mean, they even had the Will Smith slap on there the other day, so I would have had no clue.
Around the world.
But I got out of that because.
What is that? Yeah, sorry.
And no, but it's the best feeling in the world. You're gonna ask, what's that do for me?
Yeah.
I don't hear opinions that don't matter to me, and I realized that I paid so much attention to things that really don't matter, and it's made me get closer to my faith and do a bunch of stuff and just looking inward, the quiet time that everybody needs to spend by themselves. Those little thoughts. In the beginning, I would just pick up my phone and be like, I don't have Instagram. I don't have Twitter. What am I picking my phone up for?
It's human though, man.
You realize that we're addicted to it.
Well, yeah. And it's especially when people are talking about you, it's
you
get different beats.
As much as I say that I don't see it, I used to see everything because I would feed into it then.
Yeah.
And it was cute at a high school stage of Baker Mayfield will never get a scholarship, he'll never be able to make it in college. Then when it gets to the point where it's on a national television thing, then you get households talking about it, you get a bunch of people. It's just all negativity, and if I'm constantly reading that, I start to think about that in my own head.
And Scott Petrak, it's interesting to hear him admit that, and an NFL quarterback has to be above all of that.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And the first thing that pops into my head is, how did it take him so long, right? I mean, I could have told him that when he was drafted, and he's feuding with Colin Cowherd back in the day. It shouldn't have taken that long to realize you need to have better blinders on. You need not to hear all that negativity. There's a two-pronged thing there. One is he's hearing all the negative stuff, and that's affecting his confidence, which is not a good sign. And the other part of it is just being distracted, right? And welcoming all kinds of this, outside noise that he said it, that he would say, I don't listen to it, but it was obvious that he always listened to it. He always knew every criticism that we had written or anybody had written or said about him. So, you hope that from a Baker perspective that he means it, right? That it's not something he's just saying, that it's not something he'll go back to when the season starts, that he really is more focused inward. And he talked about that motivation too, that it needs to be internally motivated. And I don't know if it was always like that with him because there was such a focus on the outward motivation and the boulder on the shoulder and, kind of picking up every perceived slight. That I don't know if that's sustainable if you're starting quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, it's not, and it'll drive you crazy because everybody's going to say something, and clearly it was. All right, so the national media didn't really like what they heard from Baker Mayfield. Here is Emmanuel Acho talking about Baker being disrespected.
Baker was disrespected by the Cleveland Browns because the Cleveland Browns did not honor what Baker Mayfield had done for them. Ooh. Baker Mayfield did more for the Cleveland Browns than Russell Wilson did for Sierra relationally, got them out of the most toxic of a relationship. Think about the toxicity that the Cleveland Browns were in at the quarterback position. Think about what Baker Mayfield saved them from.
Yes.
Tim Couch, toxicity. Johnny Manziel, first-round pick, toxicity. Brady Quinn, didn't work out there, toxicity. Colt McCoy, my guy, Hall of Fame Heisman Trophy finalist a few times running, toxicity. Brandon Whedon, first-round pick, toxicity. Robert Griffin, former Heisman winner, goes to Cleveland, toxicity. Think about the stability that Baker Mayfield rescued the Cleveland Browns from. The Browns had not sniffed. They hadn't sniffed the playoffs since 2002. The Browns had not sniffed a playoff win since 1994.
Oh, really?
Baker Mayfield comes in, and 3 years later,
What happened?
Cleveland Browns go to the playoffs. Cleveland Browns win a playoff game.
Nick Chubb, Myles Garrett. It isn't all Baker Mayfield. It's just not. Football's the ultimate team game. So quarterback gets more of the blame than probably should when you lose, more of the credit than he should when you win.
Right. And, we've talked about this a million times. I don't think Baker's an elite quarterback. I don't think he will be. I don't think he's a top 18 quarterback. So I agree that the Browns should have moved on from him. Now, that doesn't erase that he did play a role in helping to turn around this franchise, right? But you're right. So did Jarvis Landry, right? It was a big part of the culture change. Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski, right? All those guys have a big role. But Baker did have a role in that, but that doesn't mean that he's the right guy moving forward. And that's the conclusion I had come to. It's a conclusion, obviously, the Browns had come to. Now, whether or not they could have handled the communication with him and his agent better this offseason, I think Andrew Berry would admit he could have contacted him before the Deshaun Watson meeting, or he did admit that. But 100% disrespected. It kind of struck me as, not that I was surprised that he said it at all, but I think that's probably going too far, because I don't think Andrew Berry tries to disrespect anybody, and I think in an honest moment, Baker Mayfield would admit that.
Yeah, and again, I thought overall I was surprised it came off pretty well, but he is not the national media has not been kind to the way that's been received. And along those lines, FS1's Undisputed, let's listen to Shannon Sharp.
He don't get it. The Browns should feel disrespected with his play. It seems to me only Skip Bayless wants to focus on 11 games in Baker Mayfield's career. The Cleveland Browns also...
Well, there's a whole rookie year, too. I don't know about those.
Clearly, that wasn't enough.
Clearly. They only won 7 games his rookie year.
What do you get for winning 7 games?
0 the year before.
Okay, where are the banners? What did they give out rings? They give out banners? What did they get? Cupcakes?
Who won Cleveland's first playoff game in 26 years? Baker Mayfield.
Clearly, that wasn't enough.
Yep.
Clearly, that wasn't enough. You want to just focus. Well, hold on.
Is it my turn to go?
He keep mentioning this. He mentioned Seattle. He has no idea. Where's Pittsburgh? I thought Mike Tomlin loved him so much after what he did to Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh.
Let it play out.
We did. That's what I kept trying to tell you. Let it play out.
It's just beginning.
No. I tried to tell you for the last 4 years, let it play out.
Okay.
And guess what? He played out. Skip, he's had 4 years to prove himself. 4 years. There should not even been no flirtation. There should not have been anything to do with Deshaun Watson in Cleveland had Baker Mayfield fulfilled his obligation. But they disrespected because Baker told them, well, hey, number 1 pick, I'm a franchise quarterback. I'm going to turn this thing around. You did not do that. And considering, Skip, the number 1 pick, and he didn't make it all the way through his rookie contract, he's about to join Jamarcus Russell and Jeff George.
Yikes! Those are names you don't want to be associated. That's a little harsh at that point. But yeah, after 4 years, you kind of know you can't expect any great leap after 4 years from an NFL quarterback.
I mean, last year was a year he was supposed to build on such a strong finish to 2020, and he didn't. And this isn't a foolproof, argument, but if a team is around a guy for that long, you have an idea if he's going to be the guy, right? The Browns should know better than anyone if Baker Mayfield can be the guy. Now, that doesn't mean the Seahawks or another team can't take a chance on a former number 1 pick. I'm sure someone will. But the Browns have the best inside intelligence, inside information of anyone in the league, and they determined that he was not the guy to compete with the Pro Bowl quarterbacks in the AFC. It's as simple as that. That doesn't mean Baker didn't show flashes. It just means they felt they needed an upgrade and went out and paid a guy $230 million guaranteed who's got a whole bunch of baggage that he brings with him. So I do think that gives you an honest opinion about how the Browns feel about Mayfield. And, here's Skip saying he did all these things. And I get it. You can't take that away. Baker won 7 games as a rookie, 27 touchdowns, set the record at the time. But if you got to the playoffs and Baker doesn't make a play in the fourth quarter, right, and doesn't take the Browns where they need to go, then that would become the narrative, kind of like it is with Jimmy Garoppolo in San Francisco. He's got a lot of good credentials, but the 49ers decided they needed someone better, and I think the Browns were on the same path with Baker, and there were some immaturity issues on top of that.
The other thing to keep in mind, Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski realize they're going to be tied to a quarterback, and that quarterback better help them win, because if you don't win in the NFL, you don't have those jobs for very long. That's the bottom line. Head coaches, general managers, quarterbacks have to win or they don't stay in the NFL.
Well, and there's no doubt about that, David. But don't you think it would have been easy enough for the Browns to say, hey, Baker was hurt last year. We think he'll bounce back, which they said for a while, right? We think he'll bounce back, and he's our guy moving forward. If he plays well, we're going to extend him, and we want him to be the guy for the next decade. Like, that seemed to be the opinion coming out of 2020 when he played really well at the end. Yet, no contract extension offer to him, no real negotiations. And then when he doesn't play well in 2021, when he was injured, but there were other reasons for performance, the Browns quickly decided that he wasn't the right guy. So, if they thought there was even a chance that Baker could turn into an elite quarterback, it would have been so much easier to give him that chance in 2022, right? You don't have to take on Deshaun Watson. You don't have to take on that money. There's plenty of Browns fans that we're still in Baker's corner, but yet the Browns felt it was imperative to go find a big-time quarterback.
Yeah, they had seen enough is what it was. And we're in agreement on that. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Scott Petrick and I are going to take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll take a look at what the Browns have done in the offseason and at some key position groups who's still out there as far as free agents go. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Scott Petrick and I continue talking Browns. So this is respective of what the Browns have already done in the offseason. Let's take a look at some free agents that are still on the market in some key position groups. Wide receiver, you see Will Fuller, Cole Landry, Julio Jones. Scott, we've heard a little bit about Fuller, and that has kind of died down. We've heard some about Landry as well. Which of those makes more sense to you? Fuller, Landry, do you think either of them end up with the Browns?
Yeah, I would still pick Landry. I'd be interested in both those guys. Will Fuller has always intrigued me, just given that the downfield speed that he has, right? He's got elite speed, and I like that in a receiver, obviously. I think that's something that's been missing from the Browns. But I would still pick Jarvis just because of his history here. The fact that he was such a big part of the turnaround, I think players and coaches love him. He's just a good guy to have on your team. So if they could figure out the financials, which I think is a tough thing to figure out given that the Browns, didn't pay him the $15 million that he was going to get paid in 2022 and cut him instead. But if they can figure it out, I would think Jarvis would be my pick of those guys. But if not, then I think Will Fuller is certainly a viable option, especially when you have Deshaun Watson. Then the choice becomes, do you spend money on Will Fuller, or do you say, we're just going to sit at number 44 and take the best receiver available from a deep receiver class?
So another area, without question, the Browns need to bolster and strengthen defensive tackle. Let's take a look at some of the names still on the market. Campbell has agreed to terms with the Ravens, I believe, so he's going back there. Yep. But you got Hicks, Ogunjobi, Goldman, Joseph, Sheldon Richardson, some familiar names there. When you look at that, does anybody make sense? Do you think the Browns investigate that further?
Yeah, I mean, Hicks to me is a difference maker among those guys. I love the idea of Calais Campbell, but he's going back to Baltimore. But Hicks is one of those kind of marquee guys that is still available. So I think he would be pricey, but I think the Browns need a defensive tackle, and I would certainly consider him. And I also am intrigued by Ogunjobi and Richardson, more so Ogunjobi because he's younger. I liked him when he's here. I thought he was a really productive player. I know his PFF numbers weren't great, but I thought he had an impact. And then he went to Cincinnati, and I thought he had a big impact. I saw him play a bunch, and he showed up to me in the run and the pass game. He's a great guy. He's a good guy to have in your locker room, works crazy hard. Now he's coming off what I think is an Achilles injury, either in the playoffs or right at the end of the regular season. So, will he be back right away? I don't know, but I think you can get him on a cheap deal. And so I like him, and I thought Sheldon Richardson, he adds value in the locker room, but also is a pass rusher, right? And that's what you need is somebody interior who can rush the passer. And out of those three guys, I think Richardson would be the best of those guys in that area.
All right, let's go back to this. So at 44, what is more likely, wide receiver, tackle, or edge? And this is assuming there are no signings and that the signings come after the draft.
Yeah, it's such a tough question because I feel like this Jadeveon Clowney cloud is just hanging there. And if the Browns feel like he's their guy, and whether it's, April 18th or May 18th that they sign him, then I think it's receiver at 44. Or I would go receiver, but I'm not ruling out any of those three positions. But if they are really not sure if Clowney's coming back, then I don't think you can ignore edge rusher at number 44. So that's going to be my caveat is Jadeveon Clowney affects it. But right now I would rank it DN, D tackle, receiver in positions of need. But I don't know, if you decide not to go edge rusher, it'd be tough not to take a receiver at number 44 just because I think there's going to be some attractive names there.
Yeah, and that's generally Andrew Berry's MO is we're going to like one of these guys that's available at 44. Doesn't matter what position. It's going to be one of those three positions likely that we really like somebody, and that's who they'll likely take. Let me ask you this. Who do you think some guys that the Browns may trade up 8-10 spots for? I'm not saying trade back into the first round. If some names slide that could potentially slide into the upper half of that second round, who do you think Andrew Berry goes and gets?
Yeah, I was talking to somebody today, maybe a Trayvon Burks, the receiver out of Arkansas. I saw him at the Combine. I was in love with the guy. I thought he'd be a top 15 pick, but now you wonder, is he second half of the first round? So could he slide into the second round? He's a guy that I think the Browns are being intrigued by, and there's reports that they you're supposed to come in for a visit. Hasn't happened yet, but that at least shows that there's interest there from the Browns. Edge rusher, David Ojabo from Michigan, he's coming off his Achilles that he tore at the pro day. I don't know if you'd have to go get him. If you move up, would you trade something to move up to get a guy that's injured and probably won't play early in the year? But he's certainly an intriguing guy to me at that position. Maybe Logan Hall out of Houston. He's kind of a tweener. Can he play inside? Can he play outside? Again, maybe you can sit at 44 and take him. But, those are the guys. It feels like, to me, there's some edge guys that probably will be gone too high that I don't think fall, into the bottom of the first round, top of the second round. But I think there's some receivers there. There's so many named guys that if one or two of those guys slipped, I could see the Browns certainly at least considering moving up, depending on what they'd have to give up.
All right, before we let you go, CBS Sports, every team's most desired do-over in the draft. And for the Browns, they go with Kellen Winslow as the 6th pick back in 2004. And the reason they say that is because they did not pick Ben Roethlisberger, who went to the Steelers and continued to basically torment the Browns his entire long career. There have been so many do-overs the Browns probably want in the draft. Justin Gilbert comes to mind, Johnny Manziel, Trent Richardson, although you got a first-round pick. Yeah. Add one of your own if you like.
I tell you what, I mean, since '99, I would go with Winslow. I think that it shaped two franchises when the Browns didn't take Ben Roethlisberger. You know, and it's nothing against Winslow's. You know, he had the knee injury, and then he had some production, and then he turns out, he's in jail right now. So, but even take that off the board. If it's all about not having Ben Roethlisberger when your organization, beforehand and afterward, spent all its time and energy looking for a franchise quarterback, and you had one in Ohio the whole time, and you didn't draft him for a tight end, right? And you traded, I think, a second-round pick to move one spot up to take the tight end. That's to me, that's the biggest miss in 20 years of misses.
Yeah, when you put it in those terms, I really can't argue with you. Scott Petrick, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram. You can read him on Brown Zone as well. Thanks so much for the time. Appreciate it. Great stuff, Scott.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, Scott Petrick, Browns beat reporter from the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram. We're going to take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we turn our attention to the Cleveland Guardians opener, the home opener, just a few hours away. And the Guardians are riding a 4-game winning streak. Bobby DiBiasio joins Sports4CLE straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Sports4CLE continues, and it is the home opener for the Guardians, and the home team rolls into the home opener against the San Francisco Giants with a 4-game winning streak, 4-2 on the year. Let's welcome in Bobby DiBiasio, the Senior Vice President for Public Affairs for the Cleveland Guardians. Bobby, as always, appreciate the time. The first question has to be, what is new at the ballpark? Every year, everything's new. What's going on over at Progressive Field that's new for 2022?
Well, hello, David. Always good to be with you, sir, as we talk another baseball season. It's when you think about the historical nature of it all, the 122nd opening day as a member of the American League here in Cleveland. Believe it or not, our 29th opening day at this ballpark here at Progressive Field, another sold out, 29 straight sellouts on opening day. What's new? Mostly, as always, food, which is such an important part of the entertainment value of a baseball game. I don't think there's another sport where food plays into the total fan experience like it does going to a ballpark. And despite all the great new things we have food-wise, the hot dog is still the #1 bestseller. So Sugardale actually has started a promotion with the home run hot dogs that you can buy in the grocery store because it is obviously the #1 seller when you go to a ballpark. But we had a chance to taste test some things the other day, and I have to tell you, the Fat Rooster Chicken and Waffles is phenomenal. There's a throw and smoke barbecue stand on the third base side, and there's a pork mac and cheese waffle cone. So picture a waffle cone, barbecue pork, some creamy mac and cheese, some coleslaw. Terrific, absolutely terrific. So there's a number of other items available to you. And one of the things that's pretty cool is we've increased to 10 locations where mobile ordering at Progressive Field is going to happen. So you sit in your seat, there's a QR code at the seat, the back of the seat in front of you. You just click on the QR code and you'll be able to order your food and go to the concession stand and grab it. And just like we've have become used to getting our airplane tickets, entertainment tickets on our phone, I think this mobile ordering is going to be something that's a regular habit for people real soon.
You can still get the tickets on your phone as well, the tickets to the Guardians game and whatnot. The other thing that's really cool, and you have local restaurants, local food choices that fans can enjoy, and that's by design to kind of make the experience what it is.
When we renovated the ballpark a number of years ago, redid the outfield area with the corner bar, opening up the main concourse, one of the thoughts we had all around the main concourse was to do something a little different with our food and beverage operation. And in partnership with Delaware North, we, partnered with 13 different local restaurants to provide an incredible value and quality and quantity and variety for our fan. Because as I said earlier, I don't think there's another sport that food is such an important element of the total fan experience, and we do it pretty darn well here at Progressive Field.
Well, when you hear the front office and Terry Francona talk, they're excited because of the young guys that this team has. Let's take a look at just how young. Let's redefine young here, and this is from Mandy Bell, the outstanding beat reporter for the Indians. So, the Guardians average under 27 years of age, 26 years, 253 days. That is the 5th youngest opening day roster, not in baseball, but in the last 30 years. So, Bobby, to say the team is young might be an understatement. And I think the thing is there's going to be ups and downs because a lot of these guys are experiencing the big league for the first time.
Well, I don't believe that any of us, you, me, a professional athlete, anyone out there watching, their growth chart as a professional or as a person, their growth chart went straight up. That there were peaks and valleys and bumps and bruises along the way. And certainly in Major League Baseball, that's the case. So we're going to see some bumps and bruises. And we have the last couple of years. But you start to see a young team grow and develop right before your eyes. And the thing that I find, David, that's the most cool part of this is these guys spent some time together in the minor leagues. And Sandy Alomar and Carlos and those guys will tell you one of the beauties of that 90s club is that there were a lot of guys who came up together, the Charlie Nagy's, et cetera, that came up together, and then they experienced winning at the big leagues together. So going from riding the buses in minor league towns to winning at the big league level, there's something incredibly special about that storyline in the game of baseball. Our guys will get comfortable. They'll grow and develop as the season goes on. It was the reason we didn't go after what I guess you could label the tier 2 free agent. Chris Antonetti had indicated at spring training in a press conference that we had identified a certain group of players that we were going to focus on to see if we could make trades or sign them as a free agent. But we weren't going to dip below that select group of people because we didn't want to put any roadblocks in the way of our young talent who we believe in. We spent an awful lot of money, time, and resources, state-of-the-art facilities all around the world. We have 7 campuses that have state-of-the-art facilities from the Dominican, our 4 minor league teams, the Progressive Field, of course, out in Goodyear at our 12-month training complex. It's an opportunity for us to invest in the people we believe in. How do you know if a young player like a Yu Chang, Owen Miller, Ernie Clement, Andres Jimenez, who's only 23, 24 years old, Emmanuel Clase, Stephen Kwan, Mercado, et cetera, how do you know they can't be an impact player in the big leagues unless you play them? And we believe in them.
All right, before I let you go, opening day, 7-10. Guardians play the San Francisco Giants. Has to be the first time you open against a National League club. It is what it is.
Yep.
Enjoy it. Embrace it.
Well, yes, because with all the things that transpired in the offseason and the change of the schedule. Here we are on a regularly scheduled 7-10 game against the San Francisco Giants. So yes, it'll be the first time that we open up against the National League team, of course, in our 122, as I mentioned, 122-year history as a charter member of the American League dating back to 1901. It's not the very first night game that we've done on opening day. There's only been a couple of those in our long history. We're going to have some fun. Tom Hanks is going to throw out the ceremonial first pitch. He's been so wonderfully invested in this franchise since the late 70s when he worked at the Great Lakes Shakespeare Festival and was in Section 109, as he always talks about, at Cleveland Municipal Stadium. He was going to throw the first pitch to Larry Doby Jr. as we celebrate the 75th anniversary of the breaking of the color barrier in Major League Baseball with Jackie Robinson and Larry Doby. So a lot of fun. If you're watching, you get down to the ballpark by 6:15 to make sure you catch all the pageantry that is opening day in Cleveland, Ohio.
Nothing like it. Bobby DiBiasio, Senior Vice President of Public Affairs for the Cleveland Guardians. As always, Bobby, thanks so much for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, David. Always a treat. Go Guardians.
All right, and on the mound for the Guardians in that opener will be Zach Plesac, taking on Carlos Rondon from the San Francisco Giants. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we talk name, image, and likeness at the high school level with Doug Ute, Executive Director of the OHSAA. Straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. Sports4CLE continues. We turn our attention to the high school sports in the state of Ohio. NIL, name, image, and likeness, becoming a factor in the high school sports area. Let's welcome in Doug Ute. He is the Executive Director of the OHSAA. Doug, appreciate the time as always. Tell us a little bit about where we sit with NIL, name, image, and likeness for the high school athletes in the state.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. And you know, we already have an amateurism bylaw that we've had for years that you know, protects the amateurism of high school athletics. So an athlete can't make money for commercial use based on his name, image, or likeness. And then with, you know, last summer with what the State House, what happened at the State House with college sports and throughout the country, and Ohio adopting their bill for the college sports. You know, we've had a lot of conversations here about, hey, what's that look like into you know, the high school realm and those kind of things, because we've had a lot of questions. And so right now we're just out with our, you know, all our bylaws are approved by the member high school principals. That's what we're governed by. And so there's a referendum item out there to you know, adopt some changes into this, and it's our NIL. So that's what we're doing right now. And obviously, you know, what NIL is that an athlete entered in a contract using their name, image, or likeness for commercial purposes can profit from that. And so we're just putting some things in here, or going to our members to say, what's it look like if we do this and protect ourselves on down the road, so that when we have this challenge, we already have something in place. And so that's what we're doing right now.
And so there's the ability for the membership to approve where an NIL would happen. So an athlete could do that. And there are some safety rails to make sure that you don't do some things that would jeopardize the OHSAA or the school. So tell us some of the, you know, the exceptions to the name, image, and likeness referendum that's out there.
Well, one of the things is, it doesn't allow for an athlete to be paid for playing a sport. So, this is already prohibited under our bylaw 410-2. It does not allow an athlete to enter into an agreement for a professional sports team. That's also prohibited in there. So one of the things we looked at doing here and aligning ourselves kind of with what they did in college, but maybe a little bit different for us and look at is that, there are 6 things that we're looking at that would come into play with our NIL at the high school level. And that's just no use of OHSAA or school logos, mascots, trademarks, or any of those type of things. And so as you see my shirt here, you can't use our logo, you can't use your school's logo, mascots, or anything along from that nature. No NIL actions during official team activities. And so, you couldn't, if you had a deal with Nike on the side, you couldn't have your school logo, or you couldn't wear that underneath a jersey that Nike emblem would be showing. No displays of school-sponsored product during official team activities, and no extra benefits for the student, school, or team or teammates. And that would limit, that's in play just to say, hey, if you had a 5-star football player and everybody on the team got something when you signed that deal, that would create some unfair advantages for schools and wet the whistle, so to speak, for some recruiting issues that shouldn't happen. Also in that is no casinos, gambling, alcohol, or drug and tobacco deals. And the student must disclose the contract with the school to review. And that's to protect the high school athlete and protect that school from that standpoint. So, those 6 things that I just mentioned there, because when people think of NIL, they think, oh my gosh, kids are going to get paid to play a sport. And this is it's protecting against that from that standpoint.
Doug Ute, Executive Director of the OHSAA. Appreciate it very much. Again, membership is voting on the NIL, and we'll have you back when that referendum vote comes back as well. But we appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Doug Ute, Executive Director of the OHSAA.
Thanks for having me.
Each week, in conjunction with the Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program, we recognize a role model student from somewhere in the state of Ohio. Today, we head to Gilmore Academy. Brandon Rose is a junior at Gilmore, but he was one of the main reasons that the Lancers basketball team made it to the Division II state championship game. In the classroom, Rose also a hard worker who just keeps getting better and better. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is proud to salute Brandon Rose from Gilmore, this week's Shining Star. Gilmore's 6'3" junior Brandon Rose may have been the most improved high school basketball player in Ohio this season. Rose was a key reason the Lancers made it all the way to the Division II state championship game.
Sophomore year wasn't my best year, and I didn't have a big role in the team. Well, over the summer, I knew my role would have to jump, and I was in the gym almost every day, working on ball handling, shooting, just getting my IQ better for the game. I think I made a big jump from sophomore to junior year. I think I showed it all year. We didn't get the outcome we wanted, but I think the team made a big jump.
He's a very self-aware young man. He understands he's a student first. He's worked extremely hard in the classroom. But as far as basketball, he puts a lot of extra time into, polishing his strengths and then working on his weaknesses. And I think it showed this year. He became a very consistent shooter from the three-point circle. He's extremely good getting to the rim, getting to the line. He can guard every position on the perimeter, and he's strong enough to move around with anyone in the post. So I think that's what really makes him special for us, is he's very versatile and understands his role. He's be who you are. He knows who he is, and that's who he plays.
It's very obvious Rose is a team-first guy, which makes the fact that he's the leading scorer and the leading rebounder on the team all the more impressive. He averaged 24 points a game during the Lancers' playoff run to the championship game.
It's special to me. I'll remember this day forever. For the school, it means a lot too, but for me, I have a goal in mind next year. It's to get here and win it all next year. So I'm excited to do that, get back in the gym this summer, and I'm ready to get back at it next year.
I never saw him trying to make plays, anything like that. He just played within the system, let the game come to him, and the winning was the ultimate goal. And for today's society, it's tough. Some people have loftier goals than more personal goals than that. Their goal was to win, and they won at the highest level. I'm so proud of him, so proud of this team.
The reason for the jump in Rose's game was simple: his work ethic. All the hard work he put in the summer paid off on the court this winter.
My shooting really opened up the game for me. I think me hitting shots from the perimeter really allowed me to get to the rim as well. Teams would close out hard on me. I'll go right around them. I improved on my free throw shooting. So I just think, my shooting as a whole really improved, so that opened up everything else for me.
Off the court, Brandon Rose brings that same kind of intensity to his academics.
My parents have always told me to be a student athlete and make sure the student is first. If I'm not a student athlete, I'm not an athlete. So grades are important for me and my family, and I got to keep those up. I want to major in sports management. If I can't play basketball in the NBA or high level, I want to be around the game. I love it so much. So grades are important for me to get that degree and be able to take care of business in college to get that job later in life. So grades are huge for me.
He's got lofty goals, and he wants basketball obviously to pay for his college, but he wants it to be at a great academic institution where he can make an impact on life, and he's going to be a great family man. He's like, Brandon Rose is literally the guy you pray your daughter comes home and says, Daddy, this is the guy I want to marry. He's such a responsible, respectful, motivated. He's just such a great young man.
If you know a student who deserves recognition, we want to hear about them, and you can nominate them completely online. Go to OhioLottery.com. Find the About section. Click on Partners in Education. There you will see links to nomination forms. Nominate that student as an academic all-star, and they could end up being featured as our next shining star. Brandon Rose, certainly a name to listen out for next year on the high school hardwood for the area as well. And don't bet against him getting that basketball scholarship to college. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. Have a great holiday weekend. We will see you back here Monday at 4 o'clock. Scheduled guest, G. Bush, host of The Barbershop on 92.3 The Fan, Saturday from 8 until noon. We'll see you Monday at 4 o'clock on Sports for CLE. Have a great holiday weekend, everybody.